From a man locked in a prison cell for 27 years who walked out to become president, to a Hollywood star written off as uninsurable who clawed his way back to the top, to an athlete cut from his high school team who returned to dominate an entire sport. These are the most epic comebacks in history that would make you wonder if these people are just built differently or are just molded in resilience. Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela wasn't just a protester, he was the loudest voice against apartheid, a system so twisted it treated the majority of South Africans like uninvited guests in their own living rooms. But the government wasn't looking for a hero. To them, Mandela was a glitch in the system they desperately wanted to delete. And in 1962, the CIA decided to play snitch, tipping off the authorities, and he was arrested. Mandela was charged with inciting strikes and leaving the country, landing him a life sentence. He spent 27 years behind bars. He watched his youth disappear while his country tore itself apart at the seams. But here is the plot twist that usually only happens in the movies. Mandela was released on February 11, 1990 by President F.W. de Klerk, with a whole lot of fanfare all over the world. Even his walkout of Victor Verster prison was broadcast live globally. However, the interesting thing about Mandela was that prison didn't break him. It was his training arc. Instead of walking out of prison with a list of names and a grudge, he walked out talking about national unity and forgiveness. But underneath his preaching, Mandela started to plot against the apartheid regime and decided it's best if he learns their game and beats them at it. One night, Mandela, in his golden robe and voice, decided to sweet-talk President de Klerk into the abolition of the apartheid regime, while simultaneously brokering peace among South Africans to prevent civil war and ethnic faction. That was the beginning of his resurgence that saw him gain global spotlight, and also win a Nobel Prize in 1993. Just a year after his Nobel Prize, on April 27, 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first black president in South Africa. And just like that, he went from prisoner 46664 to the first black president of South Africa. That's not just a comeback, that's the ultimate started from the bottom story, except the bottom was a tiny cell on Robben Island. Robert Downey Jr. Long before he was the billionaire playboy philanthropist we all know, Robert Downey Jr. was the guy Hollywood wouldn't even trust with a stapler. Let's go back to the late 90s and 2000s. RDJ wasn't a superstar. He was a liability to all movie directors. We're talking a highlight reel of arrests, rehab stints, and enough substance abuse issues. Studios didn't just avoid him. They treated him like he was a degenerate. Insurance companies refused to cover him, which, in Hollywood, is the industry equivalent of being told, you can't sit with us forever. But RDJ didn't just want that to define his career and cast him into professional obscurity. So, instead of folding, he staged a comeback, starting with the widely known Wing Chun strategy, 12-step programs for rehabilitation, and his wife Susan, who basically became his human anchors. After getting a bit of stability and a hold on himself, Robert Downey Jr. put his resume out again and started taking the small roles in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac, just to prove he could actually show up to work without ending up in a police cruiser. Then came 2008. Marvel was looking for a Tony Stark, and RDJ was looking for a miracle. Casting him as Iron Man wasn't just a gamble, it was Marvel basically walking into a Vegas casino and putting the entire company's mortgage on 00 at the roulette table. Marvel was so nervous they actually had to insure him personally because the professionals thought he was a walking disaster. The result? He didn't just deliver, he reinvented the genre. He took the MCU from a maybe to a $14 billion, and just like that, reinvented himself. Michael Jordan. Did you know Michael Jordan was actually cut from his high school varsity team? I mean, he got passed over for his 6'7" friend, Leroy Smith. But instead of crying in his Cheerios, Jordan took a bet on himself. He didn't just train harder, he somehow willed himself to the cause and grew an extra 4 inches taller because, apparently, when MJ tells his DNA to get taller, it listens. The world found out he was the real deal in 1982, when he sank a baseline jumper to clinch the NCAA title for UNC. That wasn't just a shot, it was the birth of the MJ we know. By 1984, the NBA couldn't ignore him, and the Bulls grabbed him 3rd overall. He didn't just win Rookie of the Year, he basically dragged a struggling franchise into the spotlight overnight. Fast forward to 1993 and he's sitting on a three-peat throne. And then one night, Michael Jordan decided to call it quits. Maybe he was quite literally suffering from success or was affected by the murder of his father, so he walked away from the peak of the mountain to play minor league baseball. His baseball career turned out to be less home run and more strikeout. People actually started whispering, was he really that good? Or did we just hype him up? In 1995, he ended the debate with a 2-word fax that sent the league into a panic. I'm back. No press tour, no crying on Oprah, just a return to the office to collect his things. And by things, I mean 3 more championship rings. He didn't didn't just have a comeback. He reminded the entire world that while everyone else was playing checkers, he was the one who owned the board. 6 rings, 2 dynasties, 1 Michael Jordan. Walt Disney. Early on, a newspaper editor looked Walt Disney in the eye and told him his ideas were trash. But instead of wallowing, Walt moved to Kansas City and started Laugh-O-Gram Films. Spoiler alert, the only thing laughing was his bank account, which hit zero by 1923. He didn't just hit a wall, he hit rock bottom. Walt hopped a train to California with $40 in his pocket and a suitcase that was basically held together by hope and a single suit. He and his brother Roy set up shop in a garage because apparently you can't become a billionaire in America unless you start next to a lawnmower. They finally caught a break with the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit character, but luck is a strong word. Walt got blindsided in a legal dispute and lost the rights to his own character. At this point, Trouble wasn't just Walt's middle name. It was his permanent roommate. Most people would have packed it in, but one morning, Walt hopped on the train to seek out another old friend, Ub Iwerks, for a partnership. And that same day, they teamed up to cook up a little guy character named Mickey Mouse. On November 18th, 1928, this Mickey Mouse character was featured in the movie Steamboat Willie, which debuted with fully synchronized sound. As luck would have it, the movies didn't just work, it broke the internet before the internet existed. Suddenly, Walt wasn't the unimaginative guy anymore. He was the man who turned a sketch of a rodent into a global empire. Steve Jobs. In September 1985, Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. Imagine building a revolutionary empire from your garage, only to have the CEO you hired, John Scully, basically tell you to clear out your desk. For a minute, the world thought Jobs was finished, but instead of wandering into the forced retirement chair at just 30, he pulled the ultimate revenge move. He founded Next to build high-end workstations that were, frankly, too smart for their own good. But while he was at it, he dropped $5 million on a little graphics group from Lucasfilm that was later renamed to Pixar. So while Apple was struggling to stay relevant, Jobs was casually reinventing childhood with Toy Story and becoming a billionaire just for the flex. By 1996, the tables hadn't just turned. They'd been flipped over. Apple was spiraling toward bankruptcy, bleeding cash like a stuck pig. They didn't just need a miracle, they needed the guy they'd kicked to the curb a decade ago. In 1997, Apple came crawling back like an ex-boyfriend who just realized you won the lottery. They bought Next, brought Jobs back as CEO, and the rest is history. Steve Jobs didn't just save the company. He turned it into a trillion-dollar cultural juggernaut with the release of the iMac, iPod, iPhone, which basically dictated how the 21st century would look. Muhammad Ali. In 1967, Muhammad Ali looked at the Vietnam War draft and said, "No thanks, I will not participate in the war." The government's response to that was swift and brutal. They stripped him of his title, yanked his license, and basically put the best heavyweight on the planet in a 3-year timeout. Most people figured Ali was cooked, and when he finally stepped back into the ring in 1971 and suffered a loss to Joe Frazier, the critics were doing victory laps. It looked like the greatest had finally met his match, but Ali wasn't about to go out like a could-have been. He doubled down and trained harder, leading to the legendary Rumble in the Jungle in 1974 against George Foreman. Walking into that ring in Zaire, Ali looked like he was walking into a wood chipper. Foreman was an absolute monster, but Ali pulled the ultimate work, smarter, not harder move with the rope-a-dope strategy by letting Foreman punch himself into a nap, while Ali just leaned back and chilled. He basically treated the heavyweight champion like a heavy bag until George ran out of gas. One knockout later, and the belt was back where it belonged. And just for the cherry on top, he settled the score with Frazier in the 1975 Thrilla in Manila. Turns out the only thing more dangerous than Ali in his prime was Ali with a grudge. From Nelson Mandela to Robert Downey Jr. and Michael Jordan, these stories prove that setbacks don't define greatness. What matters is the decision to rise again, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. In the end, every epic comeback reminds us that failure isn't the end of the story. It's often the beginning of something legendary.